You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amberdata. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amberdata delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amberdata eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Monday. It is a rockin' Monday. It is time once again to rock out in the crypto market, see what's lighting up the tape out here in the world of crypto derivatives. Yes, it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the THE optionsinsider.com, as well as on the network upon which all of you folks have been binging these days. Hope you're having a good time. Hope you're checking out the Futures Rundown, very much a sibling program to this one. We do touch on Bitcoin and indeed Ether futures over there, as well as some other fun things in the crypto realm. So if you're intrigued by all things underlying, make sure you're checking that out. The easiest way to do that is, of course, make sure wherever you're getting this show, you upgrade to the full network. Then you get everything. Nearly a dozen shows coming at you, vol views, the option block, all sorts of fun. And of course, the Crypto Rundown. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, want to win great, fabulous prizes and everything else, exclusive shows, exclusive podcast feed, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. The place to go as we go around the horn, see who's joining us on the old program today. I'm pleased to welcome back our old friend, Mr. Greg Magadini, the Director of Derivatives over there at Amberdata. Mr. Greg, welcome back to the show, sir.
Yeah, what a day to be back on. We're rocking and rolling today.
What a day to be alive in crypto, is it not, sir?
Oh, yes.
All right, then. Without further ado, let's get to it. It is time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down the week that was, and indeed still is, from a Bitcoin trading perspective, aka the big dog in the crypto space. And man, is it a lot bigger than it was this time a week ago. Just insane. Might be the wildest week we've ever seen in crypto history. But I'll let Greg weigh in on that in a second. First, let me break down the madness that was. Of course, this time a week ago, listeners, we were all waiting with bated breath for the outcome of the big election night here And man, did we have an outcome, and man, was it decisive, and man, did seemingly all markets, maybe with the exception of a few inverse correlated markets like gold and others, really love it out there. Equities have rallied, and crypto has had the bit in its teeth pretty much since the election. Coming into the show, it seems like such a distant level now, but just a week ago, we were 67,901 when we kicked off the show. Coming into the start of the show today, listeners, 86,439. That's up, nearly 19,000 handles from where we were this time a week ago. 18,538 to be precise. The high came earlier today. It looks like 86,636. So again, just full on bit in the teeth mode. The low came pretty much right before our show last week, 67,814. So a wild range, a wild week by just about any metric. Let's start there, Greg. You've been watching these crypto things for a while now. Is this past week, is this the wildest week you've ever seen, sir?
Wildest week? I think there's some top contenders. We had the COVID crash. That's a top contender for sure. We had the
FTX,
Coinbase flash crash. But as far as, overall market sentiment that's, not being driven by some COVID crisis, this is definitely, top 5 for sure. Today is what people in the crypto world call a God candle, when Bitcoin does 10K pretty much in 24 hours. Not quite that, but that's pretty much where we're at. Very interesting. And then we have, the related equities such as MicroStrategy rocking and rolling. And then we have MSTU, which is the 2X MicroStrategy ETF. This thing is going crazy. So there's a lot of exciting phenomenon here. And if we see the markets, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second, but it doesn't look like this is necessarily going to end here. This doesn't feel like a blow off top to me. It seems like a middle of the meat move to me. So very interesting.
Pause, catch your breath before the next leg up kind of thing.
Yes.
Are you talking Bitcoin 100K? So are you getting there? We'll get there in a second. But let's go back a week. We had our big election night spectacular last Tuesday, listeners. If you missed it, it's on the feed. Go check it out. It's 4 hours of awesome goodness. It's a good time. We had just a bevy of special guests joining us from all over the globe for that. It really was a fun time. Stay tuned till the end. We have some fun giveaways, hint, which I think might still be live. So you put some money in your pocket. But I digress. Mr. Greg, let's start there. You were unable to join us on our live election night spectacular. Walk us through as you're watching these numbers come in, and as crypto begins its inexorable, some might say undeniable march north. But what's going through your mind, sir?
Yeah, well, on election night, it was really interesting because there's a few things that kind of tipped the hand of how the market was feeling. Obviously, you guys have a volatility show, VIX trading. I thought it was really interesting that people were selling the VIX on Monday and on Tuesday. That to me felt like, the market is, not as nervous as I thought they were. So that was kind of interesting. And then obviously crypto throughout the night, as the numbers were coming in, started climbing higher. And it's been well telegraphed that the Trump election would be a bullish event for crypto. There's quite a few reasons for that. I'm happy to just kind of chat about some of the main points. One of them is SAB 121, which is basically if that gets essentially right now repealed, this would allow U.S. banks to custody crypto. U.S. banks custodying crypto is, in my mind, like kind of a game-changing phenomenon. So that's something that's really interesting. Obviously, Trump also said he would fire Gary Gensler. A lot of the crypto folks are pretty excited about that because Gensler has been pretty aggressive in terms of consumer protection and deeming protocols as securities and securities violations, and essentially kind of tangling up builders in the space with for better or for worse, kind of regulatory hand smacking. And so if that goes away, then theoretically a lot of more builders come online, VCs want to invest in the space more, so on and so forth. So that's pretty bullish. And then the big dog, which I don't think is really going to happen, but a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Obviously, the U.S. government owns some Bitcoin from sort of like the dark web confiscations and stuff like that. And Trump said, why don't we just hold on to that and make it a reserve? But the current administration, after Trump said that, decided to sell them on the market. So that created some downward pressure. So I don't know, maybe the U.S. government rebuys sort of those sold Bitcoin. I don't know if that's feasible for real, but that's a little bit of the rumor fueling the sentiment. So we have a pretty friendly, so we think friendly administration coming in for crypto. So that's why crypto is rallying super hard right now. And let's not forget, we have that spot ETF for the first time. We've created a highway or super highway for investors who are previously locked out of the market to invest in here. So the demand spigot is open and the supply is fixed. So that makes prices go up.
That's true. This time 4 years ago, you had the futures really on the U.S. side. Most of our listeners can't go play on Deribit and some of these other venues, so they were really product restricted at the end of the day. Now they have BITOs and everything else in the world. They have the other ETFs out there now that they could trade. So yes, a very different cycle from just a product availability perspective. And you're right. I think kicking Gensler to the curb will certainly, I think, warm a lot of crypto hearts out there at the end of the day. But yeah, just fascinating stuff. As you recall, this time a week ago on the show, listeners, I was kind of running through some of the data from Greg's platform here, looking at the skew and everything else, and was kind of surprised that we weren't really seeing a lot. I mean, like the weekly vol was frothy. You'd expect that. We were at about an 80 this time a week ago, which, by the way, has come in quite a bit. Obviously, now the event has transpired, even though we did have a massive move in the interim. But still, at the end of the day, the event has happened. Looking forward a week, maybe not as much on the docket from a vol perspective. So that has come in to about a 58.2. A 30-day vol a week ago was 61.25. It's 54.5 now. So coming in a little bit. Again, at the end of the day, we did move nearly 20,000 points. So at some point, that's going to keep vol somewhere near where it was. And we're seeing that in the 30-day vol. Not quite the vol annihilation you might expect if the election happened and Bitcoin just kind of sat there with a whimper. And then, of course, 6-month vol, always calmer, cooler, saner heads out there. 55.6, 53.25. But what caught my eye last week on the show, Greg, and I want to get your thoughts about all this as well, was kind of, we weren't really seeing a lot priced into the skew last week, at least not what I would expect. Coming into this event, it was still an open debate. I know looking back a week past, it seems like a done deal that Trump was going to win this thing. But a week ago, it was still very much 50-50, very much in the air. All the polls were in the margin of error. It could have very well been Harris taking it, in which case might have been a very different outcome for Bitcoin. And yet we didn't really see much bias in any direction last week in terms of Bitcoin skew. The skew last week, the weekly skew, only not even a positive 1. It was a 0.75, which to me, a point plus or minus in any direction is pretty much flat to me. This week, that has moved to the bullish side, as you might imagine. About 3 2/3 points to the upside. Last week, we didn't really see much of anything. It wasn't a big scramble to buy puts ahead of the announcement, ahead of the event, in case you were worried. A big scramble to buy calls. We were very much in the equilibrium mode. That was reflected in the 30-day vol as well. A little bit more to the bullish side there, positive 2 3/4. This week, positive about 3 1/3, so ticking up a little over half a point out there. 180-day skew, 3 3/4 positive to the upside. Last week, 2.85 this week, so coming in a little bit. Greg, what are your thoughts on those vol numbers and those skew numbers I just broke down? And were you as surprised as I was last week that we weren't seeing more, I don't know, bias, fear, call it what you will, in any direction last week heading into the election, sir?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. We actually, I'm with you. There were some decent opportunities. We actually just rolled out a cumulative distribution chart, which shows essentially for every expiration, what's the probability that's being priced in the market that Bitcoin's above XYZ prices, so on and so forth. And what we noticed is that you could, before the election, so we wrote about this in our weekly newsletter that comes out on Sunday. So this is a couple days before the election. You could buy the November 29th expiration, so end of the month, call spread between 80K and 90K, and that had a 1 to 10 payout. And so that type of trade, even though there was definitely a implied volatility premium over realized going into the election, which is what we would expect, but we weren't seeing like that massive, like you said, call skew that would normally, make that payout a little bit less interesting than 1 to 10. And today that looks like hey, this actually might pay out the whole thing by the end of the month. So there was definitely these types of opportunities where there's a little bit of an asymmetry there. You don't need to know the outcome of the election to put on something that, if it worked, a 50-50 election pays out a 1-10, that works out in the long run, those types of trades. So yeah, it was pretty interesting that the market wasn't necessarily completely pricing in all these scenarios.
Yeah, I thought for sure we'd see something in some direction. I didn't know which one. It could have been a lot of people concerned and loading up on puts and put spreads. Could have been the other way, the hodlers coming in saying, here we go, bidding us up to the upside. I didn't really have a kind of flat skew on my bingo card heading into the election, but you're right. That's exactly what we got. It made some of those trades you were just talking about maybe a little bit more attractive than they would have normally been. And we're seeing the results right now. Anything else catching your eye from a pure vol front in this post-election rampage, sir?
Yeah, so one of the things that's obvious is post-election, we get a crushing of the vol of the implied. So, going into the election, 7-day implied was about 89, but realized was only about 47 for 7 days. So big premium. Then you get the election event and implied drops from 86 down to about 44. And so those types of scenarios are really interesting to me because now we have reason for a trending market. And so in a trending market, even though the intraday vol might be low, a long dated option, if we drift one way, you can overpay for the vol and still make a lot of money on the option because volatility theoretically cuts both ways. But if you have a strong drift, that makes up for it. And so we have something that looks like it's trending. And so I've seen this in earnings as well. Post-event vol collapses, but it collapses in a way that potentially is too aggressive because it's not like we won't have reason for movement now. We actually have more reason for trending movement, and implied vol essentially got smushed post-election results. So that's a type of trade that gets really, really interesting in my mind. I think long vol is to play here. Obviously, vol has picked up a little bit since the lows post-election, but those are the types of trades today that are really interesting. Let's remember, Bitcoin is a brand new asset class. We don't really have a precedent for this, so it's not like corn is rallying and then farmers are going to plant more corn or whatever. The stock, an equity that's rallying. There's a potential supply shock here where I don't know if someone significant like a government or someone like that actually does decide to buy some Bitcoin for real, and we've seen it with El Salvador already. This thing can just gap up to 100K and still keep going. So we're definitely in that environment where don't call a top. If anything, there's a chance for a real right tail risk where things go incredibly parabolic higher.
Tell us how you really feel, sir. You are calling for that. You are calling for that Bitcoin 100. I could hear it in your voice here. Speaking of calling for things, we just put it out to our audience, Mr. Greg, a little flash poll just for fun, because at the end of the day, they are the ultimate arbiters of these things. And we just said, quite simply, was this past week the wildest week in crypto history? Just very simple, yes or no. And it's only been live for a few minutes, Greg, but how do you think folks are voting in the early blush, sir?
Wildest week, I think, well, I would say probably they're saying yes, because unless they've been around in 2011 or 2009 or some of the early years of crypto, this is one of the most wild weeks. So I would say they're saying yes.
You are correct, sir. 75% right now in the first few minutes saying yes, 25% saying no. Obviously, that's going to evolve. We'll check in on it again later in the show. Get over it. That's why you have to be listening live, listeners, and at the very least, following us over there on Twitter/X, because fun stuff like this is going out all the time, in addition to links to shows and everything else out there. All right, let's get some of the other products you folks have been slinging fast and furious. And when I mean fast and furious, I don't know, Greg, some of these volume numbers are kind of backing up that this was the wildest week in crypto history. These numbers are I think the technical term is ridiculous. Let's go out to BitO first. BitO, as we kicked off the show, listeners, 23.25. That put it up exactly 5 handles from where it was this time a week ago. Obviously 18.25 back then in those before times, listeners, has ticked up since the show started to about 23.5. So adding another 25 cents on the top there, listeners. ADV skyrocketing up another 35,000 contracts a day to 168. By the way, I forgot who that was who asked what ADV was last week. That's it. Just average daily volume. Pretty straightforward there, listeners. So up to 168,000 contracts a day out there. So BITO on the old rampage. And if that's not enough for you listeners, 495, closing in on 500,000. These are like VIX numbers now here on the tape here. Just a banger by any stretch of the imagination. You want to know what folks are up to right now, listeners? They are believing what Greg is putting down. They're buying some upside, looks like, to the tune of the 24 halves expiring this week. So they were a point and a quarter out of the money. Now they're about $1 out of the money. They started trading earlier this morning. Let's see what prices. 31,563 were traded on the open this morning for 27 cents when we were actually around this level, 23.18. So pretty close to this price. I don't know, Greg, are you a believer? Are you a buyer of the 24 halves expiring this week in BITO for 27 cents? And what do you make of this just explosion of paper out here, sir?
Well, I love the explosion of paper for sure. To me, this is the new market participants participating. So that's a very good sign. In terms of 24 halves in BITO, sure. I mean, that definitely can hit. I don't like BITO as a long-term investment in Bitcoin because of all the weird things that happen with the contango and the dividend payout. But as a end of the week trade, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily see Bitcoin stopping here. So why not?
Yeah, that's a decent use case for BITO. I'm with you. I don't like loading up on calls for the long term, but swinging for a week, not the wildest thing I've seen out here. This thing, the way this thing's moving, it could be there by the end of the day, Greg. So just crazy town out here in BITO. Have you been loading up on calls or upside? Also, we have the March 23s going up today as well. Well, that's interesting. Let's see. Those went up for nearly $2. Looks like we got a bit of a call overwrite going up there, listeners. Nearly $2. So that's an interesting one as well. That's a aggressive in the money override if that's the case. Now there's some OI there, so they could be bailing on these. I'll have to go look and see. Potentially they are closing there. And then we have 21 halves going up today, 35,000 times as well. So those bad boys trading quite a bit. Looks like they traded for nearly $2, $1.83 earlier this morning. Looks like somebody may be trying to overwrite for this week. So interesting things. Again, 31,000. So it looks like it might be. Oh, you know what? This is probably didn't go up as a spread, but it looks like this is a spread, Greg. Looks like they sold the 21 halves for $1.83, 31,563 times, and then they bought the 24 halves for 27 cents, and that was opening. So it looks like it's a bit of a roll up, Mr. Greg, from the 21 halves, which are obviously now in the money, listeners, to the 24 halves. You like that a little better, Greg, as a roll?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I kind of like the other trade. The other trade, too, could have definitely worked out. It's more of a YOLO trade to just own the 24 halves in size, but I kind of like that trade, too.
Go big or go home. Greg says put all the kids' college fund on the 24 halves expiring this week, listeners. Send your hate mail if they don't work out to Greg at Amberdata.com. As we keep rolling, let's go out to Greg's favorite product out here. This is the one he says put the kids' college fund in. This is BitX. You know what? If you did that this past week, you're kind of looking pretty good right now. Is that a 49 even when we kicked off the show? Up, only 18 handles from where we were this time last week. So, and that's actually nearly a 50 right now, up another $1 since we started talking. So, my goodness, living up to its levered 2x premise out there. My goodness. ADV ticking up hard, 36,000 contracts a day now. That's up 6,000 from this time a week ago. And you want to see some volume, listeners, 110,000 in just BitX alone. We used to maybe see BITO doing this on a good day. Now BitX is putting up 110,000 contracts. I can't remember the last time we've seen, maybe ever, this much paper in BitX. And the big dog, unlike BITO, which was huge blocks, these are smaller blocks, 4,500 of the, actually, I would have said the 50s are kind of outlandish, but we're only $1. Actually, that's almost at the money now. We're almost at the 50 handle now. So, my goodness. I don't know, Greg. I guess I would ask if you like these, but they're looking pretty good. These were the 50s. They traded about 2.25 earlier this morning. You got to like them now that we're at the 50 handle. And I know you love BitX. What other trades have been catching your eye out here, sir?
Yeah, BitX is one of those interesting vehicles, but it's like we just talked about BitO. It's not one of those things that you buy the upside for the long term. There's too many factors going against it, including the 2x decay factor in a high vol asset. But that's what makes this vehicle interesting. To me, BitX, you should always sort of assume it has a short bias in the long run, and you use it as a hedging vehicle against your Bitcoin bags on Coinbase or something. That's how I like to think about it. The short-term trade of the 50 calls, sure, that works. Just like the 24 halves in BitO, that works, short-term stuff. But the real interesting aspect of this vehicle is the long-term decay. And so one of the things that's pretty nice about BitX is, if you're talking about a high vol asset, and now if you're trying to trade some Vega, well, then there's got 2 times the high vol asset. So that's always an interesting one. And I think the other one we should talk about is MicroStrategy and the MicroStrategy 2X vehicle. That's also very interesting.
All right, sir, let's get into that right now. We don't talk about a lot of MicroStrategy, but you're right. It is, for a lot of people, it is a proxy for all things crypto, and it is on the rampage yet again today, listeners. 337.35, up nearly 67 handles. Oh, only 25% just today, Mr. Greg. I don't know, Greg, the data's starting to undermine you a bit. This might be the wildest week in crypto history, sir. I don't know. I'm starting to agree with the listeners. What do you think? 25% in one day MicroStrategy? That's just bonkers town, sir.
It's absolutely bonkers town. So, okay, if we just think about the different volatility instruments. So Bitcoin vol is, call it, 60 to 70. Then you have MicroStrategy vol, which is almost 2 times. It's about 140, maybe 130, depending on what maturities you're looking at. And then you have MSTU, which is a 2x MicroStrategy. So now all of a sudden you're looking at 4x Bitcoin vol. Bitcoin vol is already insane. So these are the types of vehicles that, there's going to be interesting drift dynamics to them. So let's remember, if something drops 50%, it has to rally 100% to get back to even. If you take a high volatility asset, the drops and subsequent rallies are going to have more of a tracking error. And then you got to remember, like, fundamentally, something like BitO and BitX, they're exposed to that futures contango, which is a drift lower. And then MicroStrategy trades at a huge premium over net assets. So MicroStrategy shares, the market cap of MicroStrategy is, last time I checked, almost 3x the amount of Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Today, investors don't seem to care about that. But in the long term, I think those types of things mean revert, or they have sort of a decreasing rate of increase if Bitcoin keeps rallying as the net asset value catches up. So that's something to keep in mind. Typically companies trade at huge premiums over book value. That's normal, but MSTR is more like an ETF than it is like a software company that's selling software and growing at a huge multiple. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you have that 2x payout using the MSTU, now you also have that tracking error 2x risk thing. So there's a lot of interesting moving parts there that makes those option markets very, very interesting. One of the things, talking about MSTU, this thing is up 50% today, 44 handles, $136 a share, while the strike prices ended at 135. So this thing rallied so hard, so fast, that we're through the whole call leg of strike prices for all expirations. There is no out of the money call at this point. Everything is in the money because we've rallied through all the out of monies.
You talk about a product for just pure crypto degenerates. Here you go, Greg. I mean, I'm just looking at this thing while we're talking, because MicroStrategy, it's so boring, right? Oh, that's just who comes to this and says, you know what? That's too boring for my needs. I need a 2x levered version of that product. Because why not, Greg? We're just making 2x levered everything now. Why not? I mean, my goodness, this thing is just, again, kind of feeding back to my data point from earlier, Greg. This might be the wildest week in crypto history. Just all these things, that just the availability of these products alone makes it crazy. These things didn't exist when, FTX melted down, or certainly back in like the Mt. Gox days, or some of the other data points a lot of people talk about. And so just by having these products out here just to amplify all this stuff, it does make it crazy. I'm looking at this right now, Greg. Yeah, it does 13,000 contracts a day against an ADV of 3,700. If you are intrigued by this just absolute crazy town product out here, listen. I don't know about you, but I've never really seen the appeal for MicroStrategy, let alone the ridiculous premium, as you mentioned, that it has to effectively its book value. I don't need to pay someone else to buy Bitcoin for. If I want to go buy Bitcoin, I'll go buy the products that track Bitcoin and do that. So the fact that folks bid up this crazy premium to this name never really made sense for me, let alone the need for a 2x long. But again, that feeds back. That's why it's the wildest week in crypto history, Greg. Prove me wrong, sir.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. So they would argue that I remember, just a quick analogy. I remember a long time ago, this was probably in 2014, 2015, oil broke down and the CEO of ConocoPhillips said, hey, I'm just going to take off the hedges of all our oil production because I think oil will bounce back. And oil didn't bounce back, and he got a lot of trouble, and I think he got fired for kind of that reckless decision. And I remember I saw an analyst comment, hey, I'm investing in ConocoPhillips because you have a specialty in oil production, not just doing a futures trade, because I can just go do the futures trade. So to your point, does MicroStrategy have, special access to buying Bitcoin that you as an individual don't have? I think the one argument that they would say is, hey, we have access to capital markets that offer us low leverage to essentially buy this asset. So, okay, that's maybe an advantage that MicroStrategy has as a company when it comes to buying Bitcoin. But let's not remember, leverage cuts both ways, especially in a high volatile asset. The more leverage you have, the more, it can cut the wrong way. So I'm with you. This is a very peculiar sort of phenomenon. I mean, obviously, I like Michael Saylor. I'm not trying to throw shade or anything, but I would not personally own MicroStrategy. I'd rather just own the asset and not pay the premium. And so it's just one of those things, like, let's be aware of this. And then there will be trading opportunities as a result of this. So it's just a very interesting trading vehicle.
Speaking of interesting trading vehicles, we got to get there, listeners. It is time to expand our horizons and explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we break down everything lighting it up outside of the big dog, which is Bitcoin. And if you're not a believer, listeners, in, let's say, the second tier and below of the crypto universe, maybe making some moves, and maybe you want to cover your ears for a little bit out here, because we had some pretty massive shakeups here in our top 10 this week. Or maybe you'll be excited because some names have been kicked to the curb. But yeah, it's again, Greg, I didn't really believe it when we kicked off the show, but the more I'm crunching the data here on the show, I'm starting to believe this might be there's definitely one of, and it might be the wildest week in crypto history, sir. What other week do we have number 10, Greg, on our crypto top 10 market cap with a whopping $16.25 billion? What other week do we have Shiba fighting its way into the top 10 this week, Greg? I mean, riddle me that. That alone is wild, sir.
Love it.
I mean, I know you're a big fan of the, shall we say, the lesser coins. So there we go. All of you out there in the audience who've been writing in for years now saying, where are my Shiba Lambos? Here you go. 16.25 trillion. Maybe you can pay for a hubcap on that Lambo. Now, I'll have to go check, Greg. Shiba might actually be back to where I bought some years ago when all of our listeners are like, you got to have a little Shiba in your back pocket. So I did, and it's been pretty much circling the bowl ever since. So there you go, Greg. Maybe I could scratch my Shiba trade. There we go. That alone makes it the wildest week in crypto history, just by that data point alone. Number 9, listeners, we got Cardano. Cardano fighting its way here into the top 10. When's the last time we saw that? It's been quite a while there. So complete shakeup in the bottom half of our top 10, which again, Maybe it goes back to that. Maybe, maybe it is, listeners. Number 9, Cardano, almost 21 billion worth of market cap, just on the rampage for Cardano. Number 8, actually dropping a slot, but gaining demonstrably in value. I don't know, Greg, here's another data point for you. XRP caught a bid and it actually held it. There you go. That makes it the wildest week in crypto history. The debate is over, sir. What do you think?
I remember back in the days, 2016, 2017, that was a trade. It was Ethereum versus XRP market cap. So sometimes XRP market cap was higher than Ethereum, then Ethereum was higher than XRP, but everyone in the crypto space knew that XRP was kind of like a garbage coin. And so the second that thing exceeded Ethereum market cap, you sell it. So it was one of those things. So yeah, if XRP is even moving, you know things they're not frothy yet, but that's a frothy meter.
That's the FU Gensler trade right there. Just the fact that XRP holding a bid there, listener. So if you're an XRP holder, you've been suffering for years now, maybe you're feeling a little better this week. XRP number 8, almost 34 billion worth of market cap. Number 7, USD coin, 36, almost 37 billion. Number 6, Greg. Here we go. If this is not the data point, I don't know what is. Dogecoin, number 6, Greg, 47.8. It climbed on a wild week. Dogecoin climbed 2 spots. It now has 47. Let's see, where were we last week? Last week we were 23.25 billion, Greg. So we have more than doubled in Dogecoin market. So there you go. Maybe the debate is over, sir. That if Doge's number is number 6, it might be the wildest week in crypto history. What do you think?
Dogecoin to me, that was a foreseeable layup. Elon's a big Doge guy. I think they're going to integrate payments into X at some point. Doge is probably the benefactor crypto if that does happen. If he goes the crypto route, he loves to hint that his Department of Government Agency or Efficiency is going to be named Doge. Tesla has rallied 50% since last Tuesday. So yeah, in my mind, Doge at $1 wouldn't be surprising. Long term, if any of those things happened. So yeah, I think that one was a foreseeable layup.
I believe we flirted with Doge at $1 back when Elon did SNL, and then I don't think we ever really cared. That was the high. But yeah, getting back to a third of that right now, almost 33 cents. I think I'm actually up on Doge as well now, sir. So that's wild. I'm scratched on Shiba. I might be up on Doge. Time to hit the sell button, Mr. Greg. All right, let's go out here. Number 5. It's BNB, 91.6 billion. Number 4, Solana on the rampage, listeners. Hopefully you sprinkled a little Solana in your wallet over the better part of the last year because it was trading nearly 220 when we ran this chart, listeners. 103.4 billion. So it leapt from last week. It was number 5. Kicked BNB to the curb. They've been locked at number 4 forever. Number 3 is Tether, and Solana's closing in on that. Only in air quotes, only 20 billion to go to catch up to Tether. So pretty much the entire market cap of Cardano, or more than the market cap of Shiba Inu. But on this trajectory, Solana can get there. Number 3, Tether, 123 billion. Number 2, it's ETH, 400 billion, pretty much exactly. And the big dog. You know it. Maybe you love it. Maybe you hate it. Either way, 1.7 trillion with a T, listeners. My goodness, on the rampage. ETH showing no signs of slowing up. On our show last week, 24.30. This week, 33.30. So by my math, that puts us up a whopping 900 points here on the week for good old ETH. Yeah, just a wild week. 24.30 on the show last week, listeners. And then almost 1,000 handles, 900 handles to the upside. The high pretty much right as we kicked off the show. I haven't checked since the show started. Probably has ticked higher since then. And our low was, looks like we broke 2,400, 23.97 on the show last week. So just wild times there. Greg, walk us through what's been catching your eye in ETH since we last chatted, sir.
Yes. So ETH, well, first off, the Bitcoin ETH ratio, finally that's getting better. So ETH is finally recovering some ground against Bitcoin. At least in little part. There's a lot of ground to recover, so to speak. So fundamentally, just to kind of lay out the landscape, if Gensler gets fired, if regulation gets friendlier towards crypto, ETH, Solana, layer one smart contract blockchains are big winners in that scenario because their whole value proposition is that they're the base infrastructure for protocols to build on top of. So if people are building protocols, if VCs are investing in those protocols in their teams, this is great news for Ethereum, great news for Solana. Fundamentally speaking, Ethereum has this burn mechanism. So every time there's a transaction that occurs on the Ethereum network, a little bit of the transaction fee creates an ETH burn. So the supply theoretically shrinks. There's about 4 to 5% inflationary supply in Ethereum by design. Those are the minor rewards for proof of stake. So if the transactions are high enough, that the burn exceeds the inflation, and now you have a deflationary asset. If the transactions are too low, then you have an inflationary asset. So ETH is very sensitive to people using protocols on the ETH blockchain. Now, just kind of a last scope context, Ethereum scaling today, a lot of people have been building app chains, layer twos. So all the transactions occur off of Ethereum into layer two, but every 10 minutes, the state of the L2 gets reconciled to Ethereum L1. So now the transactions that would normally cause burn are not causing burn. So that's the context behind the bearishness of ETH over the past 12 months. Now, does this election change the scope for DeFi protocols? And is that bullish for ETH? I think there is an argument to be said that yes, there is. And so therefore, there's definitely some interesting trades in Ethereum. But if people decide to buy Bitcoin as a reserve currency asset, again, Ethereum is going to underperform in that situation. So those are kind of all the things to look at. If I'm looking at vol in Ethereum, we have a little bit of a premium over Bitcoin. Makes sense. Smaller market cap, theoretically has more beta. ETH all-time high should be about close to $5,000. So we're still 40% off of that, give or take 30%, whatever it is. While Bitcoin is clearly in all-time high territories by almost 15-20%. So obviously ETH has lagged a lot. So there's a good argument for catch-up trades, and so call spreads, things like that could be really interesting in ETH.
Let's break down some of those numbers here, listeners. Let's go out to the weekly vol was an 81 right before the big event last week. Almost about a little over 10 points to the dark side now. 70 and about a third right now. So coming in, like I said, a little over 10 points out there. 30-day vol. This is interesting. Almost literally unched. We were at a 64 on the show last week, 63 3/4 as we kicked off the show. So again, we had the event already, but we also had a pretty massive move. How often does ETH move nearly 1,000 handles in a week? Not too often. So that's going to keep things still a little bit frothy, a little bit spicy, and clearly it was enough to maintain our vol levels from last week. Long-term vol actually ticking up. The 180-day vol, 62.8 on the show last week. 63 this week. Let's go out to the skew. Last week on the show, we were slightly negatively biased, -2, which is kind of interesting. Maybe some folks looking for ETH to take a turn. This week, swinging to the other direction, over 5 points. It's 3.4 to the upside now. So again, that's about 5.4 point swing to the upside this week. Going out to the monthly skew, looking pretty bullish as well, which is not exactly surprising. We were at a -1 on the show last week, positive 3.7 this week. And the 180-day skew, positive 3.5 on the show last week, positive 3 this week. Let me run down some of the other altcoin here, then we'll get into some of Greg's favorite altcoin to keep an eye on. And also some of your questions. I know you folks have been firing away. Understandably, this is the time a lot of people have questions about crypto. Solana, I was just talking about it. I mean, my goodness, up almost exactly 60 handles on the week, 159.45 last week, 219.5. when we kicked off the show this week. So up a whopping $60 and a nickel. just on the rampage out here in Solana. XRP, we just talked about it, caught a bid, and so far at least has managed to sustain it and maintain it. That in and of itself makes this one of the wildest weeks in crypto. For the better part of the last decade now, if XRP caught a bid, it was right back down. last week 50.9 cents. This week 59.5 cents. So keeping that bid so far. Doge, we just talked about it. More than, actually looks like almost exactly doubling. It was almost 16 cents. It was 15.9 cents. Coming in the start of the show today, 32.5 cents. So if you had a pretty much 100% upside move in Doge in your back pocket, then you're feeling pretty good right now. If you're like me, you're back to actually making some money on Doge. Now I have to go check, but I'm actually up modestly on Doge. Let's hit the exit together, listeners, shall we? I'm just kidding. Got to hold old Doge for the long term, right? Let's get up to $1 again, and we'll see where we're going from there. Litecoin, nice run, 66.17 last week, 78.25 this week, up a little over 12 handles. Cardano, 32.8 cents last week, 59.4 cents, up 26.5 cents. This one fighting its way into the top 10 now. We haven't said that in a while. Again, maybe another data point. Kind of a wild week. Polkadot, 378 last week, 521 this week, up $1.43. And everyone's favorite, I know it's Greg's favorite, Shiba, 1,000,000 zeros, 1689 last week. This week, 1,000,000 zeros, 2769. So not quite 2x, not quite Doge numbers, but pretty darn close to it. Listeners, maybe you're getting the lug nut on one of those hubcaps of those Shiba Lambos if this keeps up. Greg, I know you're always watching some wild and crazy coins out there. What are you keeping an eye on in the altcoin universe right now?
Well, I like Doge. I think there's a play there. Solana has been eating ETH's lunch in relative performance terms. And obviously Solana has an options market, so I like Solana as well. We've recently launched options on Deribit for BNB. Not a crypto that I'm particularly interested in, but interesting to look at in terms of vol. So those are kind of the things that I'm looking at. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunity in the altcoin space if you're really into that stuff. I would definitely say, have at it. There's definitely edge hidden there somewhere, especially if you're in the Discord, especially if you're, deep into the crypto communities. It's not something that's been my focus. I'm very much into the crypto vol side of things, but there is some Delta One spot trading for altcoins that people do really well on. So I don't want to poo-poo it. There's definitely some stuff out there.
No poo-pooing here as we keep on rolling to tackle some of your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, let's get out to the crypto questions. First off, we had a fun flash poll on the show last week. This time a week ago, we saw a pretty big print in BITO. Was 100,000 of the DEES 1575, 1315. So funky strikes there, listeners. Put spreads traded for 63 cents 100,000 times. We said at that price, are you a buyer or a seller? And obviously, if you're selling that put spread, you're pretty much bullish on Bitcoin and bullish on BITO. If you're buying it, you're probably bearish on the near-term prospects. Or we said, hey, this stuff's just too crazy for you. Wake me when it's over. And 40% of you went that way. You said this is just too wild. I don't think you could wrap your heads around crypto right before the election when so many other things were popping off. Surprisingly, Greg, fully a third of our audience, 33.3%, said they wanted to buy that spread. Obviously, in hindsight, it was the right way to sell it. But in the past, I've always sold puts in BITO anyway, so I like that use case for that. Even though you don't get a ton for them, it's a great wheel candidate as a result as well. So I was surprised, Mr. Greg, fully a third of our audience was kind of fading BITO going into the end of the year. What are your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, interesting. I haven't really thought about playing it that way. That's a very interesting kind of perspective.
Yeah, and at least for right now, Mr. Greg, and not the right one, as BITO on the rampage and nearly 10 handles above that strike now. Those 1575 puts. I guess on the plus side, listeners, if you really liked that put spread, you can buy it for a lot less right now. Dare I say it, you could just buy the 1575 puts by themselves for much less than the cost of that spread right now. But let's go out here to our actual kind of flash poll that's live right now, Mr. Greg. We were kind of joking about it throughout the show, but we thought, let's put it out to our audience. Quite simply, is this the wildest week in crypto history? Yes or no? It has mitigated somewhat, Mr. Greg. Now it's 2/3 of our audience says yes, and exactly a third says no. A lot of people chiming in. Some people taking your tack, Mr. Greg. Russell on Value here wants to know, how short is your memory? So he agrees with you that probably it is not the wildest number. Shaheen Rahman saying it will be this coming week. And a lot of other data. Oh, just ticked again, Mr. Greg. Now we're down to 57.1% for yes and 42.9% for no. So our audience close to 50-50, which makes a market. What are your thoughts, Greg? You get the final say. Is it or is it not the wildest week in crypto history?
It's definitely top 5, if not top 3. But like one of the listeners said, let's see how the rest of the week plays out. Because if we're top 3 today and tomorrow is exactly the same as today, yes, it will be the wildest week ever.
What stands out for you above it? Is it FTX? Is it the first kind of initial sell-off, the kickoff crypto winter back in like early 28? What is the data point that stands out ahead of this for you?
COVID is one of the major ones for me. That was quite the extreme week. It was the bearish week, but yes, that was definitely one of the craziest.
So March of 2020 is still number 1 for you. Okay, I get it. Yep. There's certainly an argument for that. I'm not gonna argue against that one. That was a wild week by just about any stretch of the imagination out here, listeners. All right, we'll get Greg out of here on this one just because it's fun. Greg, you've been on Vol Views before. Our actual question of the week, when we're not talking crypto, has to do with vol. And we said, the last time Trump took office back in early 2017, volatility went to die. VIX, aka the Fair Index, listeners, it went to single digits and stayed there for a good chunk of the year. So we thought we'd ask you folks, do you think we'll see anything along those lines this year? Very simple question for you right now, Greg, and for our audience. Will VIX close in single digits at least once this year? And folks have been voting hot and heavy. It just went live a little over an hour ago, Greg. Greg, where do you fall on that? Are we gonna kiss single digits at least once this coming year?
Ooh, that's very interesting, because I definitely remember 2017. Great time to own the SVIX was 2017 or XIV at the time.
I was going to say, if SVIX existed, that would have been interesting, yeah.
Yeah. And if you own the other one,
hopefully you sold it before.
SPXY.
Hope you sold it before February of 2018. Then you did pretty good.
Exactly. But before then, it was amazing. So I actually think the bull market is in a different phase than it was back then. So I'm going to say no. I don't think we get to the single-digit VIX levels.
Well, you are agreeing with our audience on this one, Mr. Greg. 57.8% right now saying no. 42.2% saying yes. So it's another hotly contentious one. Get over there, add options, and make your voice heard. And Mr. Greg, if folks want to check out what you and the crew over there at Amberdata are up to, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to check out crypto vol charts, we actually made our platform free. You just sign up for an email and get full access. That's pro.amberdata.io. If you want to check us out on Twitter @GenesisVol. If you want to go to our YouTube channel, Amberdata Derivatives. And lastly, if you want to listen to our weekly or read our weekly newsletter, you can go ahead to amberdataderivatives.substack.com. And then lastly, if you want to just understand more about Amberdata's offering and looking for some institutional grade data, you can go to amberdata.io.
And you guys are always working on some cool new things. Let's leave the people wanting more. Give them a hint. Give them a tease of what they can look forward to coming from Amberdata in the near future, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. This week, we're releasing cumulative distribution functions. You can see how the option market is pricing in probabilities. So that's great. That'll be a nice tool. We're also going to be releasing next week BitO vol charts, BitX vol charts, MSTR, MSTU, IBIT once those options launch, all that great stuff. And then we're going to do a whole new GUI reskin in the first quarter of next year. So that'll be really exciting as well.
Perfect timing to launch all these new features in the middle of the wildest week in crypto history, sir. Perfect timing. Well done on your part out there, sir. Check out all the new coat of paint, all the new bells and whistles out there. I don't know, you mentioned IBIT. We didn't even get to it today because it's kind of a sore spot. Are you optimistic we'll see these even by the end of the year, the IBIT options, Greg?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We're going to fire Gensler and list some options.
Once Gensler's out the door, before the door even hits him on the way out, those options are live. All right, I like what you're putting down there. All right, interesting. So that might be a fun poll we should do next week as well. Listen, will we see these things in our hot little trading accounts before the end of the year? Well, Greg, I like your optimism. Let's hope it's certainly infecting the crypto market right now. They're feeling pretty bullish. Interesting stuff out there, listener. That is going to do it for us on the network today. Back again tomorrow. We'll have our pro Q&A rolling out with our good buddy, Mr. Scott Nations. He's always got some fun historical perspectives on vol. We have talked crypto with him and crypto vol once or twice. So if you want to get in on those crypto vol Q&As, only one place to go. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go to get past the velvet rope. And we're back again on Wednesday with the newest addition to the network, the Futures Rundown, where, spoiler alert, we do talk about crypto. And given some of these numbers and some of this movement, I have a feeling, unless everything falls out of bed, we're going to be talking about it more on Wednesday. So if you want more crypto in your life, stay tuned for the Futures Rundown. After that, if you're new to the world of all things options, Options Bootcamp will serve you well. And then Thursday, This Week in Futures Options, another show that touches on crypto. So we now really have 3 shows on the network, listeners, that really touch on crypto in some capacity. Of course, the option block on Thursday, Friday, Vol Views, and then we come back one final time before my voice dies for the week, listeners, to talk a little bit of options oddities. Then we're back again next Monday. Will next week be the next wildest week in crypto history? I guess you got to be there to find out, listeners. So we'll see you there next Monday. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amberdata. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amberdata delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amberdata eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.